My husband had just come out of the ICU when he made a will, stating that he would leave the house and all his savings to me. His only request was that after his passing, I take care of his mother, his adopted sister, and her child. I was deeply moved. I worked 3 jobs a day to support the entire family. After work, I stayed up late to care for him, a critically ill patient. 10 years later, overworked and exhausted, I was diagnosed with a terminal illness at a young age. Meanwhile, under my meticulous care, my husband had made a full recovery. Only on my deathbed did I realize the so-called adopted sister was fake, but the mistress was real. The will was fake, but the emotional blackmail was real. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day my husband made that will. Gritting my teeth, I accepted the fortune. Fine. Since this is how you want it, I will take good care of your whole family. Years of exhaustion took their toll, and I developed a terminal illness. The day I was admitted to the hospital, my husband brought his newly acknowledged sister to visit me. I saw their hands intertwined, my eyes widened, and my heart trembled. Sophia put on a look of feigned surprise. "Oh my, so you saw it? Well, there's no need to hide it anymore. I was actually Daniel's first love. I only moved into your house under the guise of being his sister. And my son, Lucas, did you know? He's Daniel's biological son." No wonder my mother-in-law had insisted on adopting a single mother with a 7-year-old child out of nowhere. I had always found it strange. Normally, just offering financial help would be enough. Why insist on adoption? Now it made sense. It was so she could see her grandson every day. So, I had spent my whole life struggling to raise my husband's mistress and his illegitimate son. The weight of the revelation was too much for me to process. "You two are monsters. You deserve to die." I roared and tried to get out of bed to hit them, but I had no strength left. Sophia looked down at me with a smirk, as if watching a pathetic joke. "You're the one dying now. We're here to get you to sign the waiver for treatment," she added with a sweet smile, "and of course, to thank you for taking such good care of Daniel's health. We'll be living happily ever after." I lifted my eyes to look at my husband Daniel. For a split second, there was a flicker of pity in his gaze, but just a flicker. Then he said, "Don't blame me. The person I truly love isn't you. But I do appreciate everything you've done for me. We'll make sure your funeral is properly arranged. You can rest in peace." What a ridiculous thing to say. I had sacrificed everything for him, and in the end, all I got was a farewell telling me to rest in peace. I stared at them both, hatred burning in my eyes. "Are you even human?" I gritted out. "I spent my whole life paying off this mortgage, and this is how you repay me?" Daniel scoffed. "This was your own choice. No one forced you. In the end, weren't you just after my money and house? Otherwise, why would you even agree to take care of me?" He couldn't bear to meet my gaze any longer. Instead, he wrapped his arm around Sophia. "There's only one person in this world who loves me without expecting anything in return, Sophia. She's been wronged for so many years." I laughed bitterly. When he got sick, he made a will leaving all his money to me. At the time, I was so touched. I really thought he loved me. In the end, that money was spent on him anyway. The house had a mortgage, and I was the one who paid it off, bit by bit. And now, he had the audacity to accuse me of being after his money, while Sophia, who had done nothing, was somehow more noble in his eyes. Rage boiled inside me, and I coughed up a mouthful of blood. The pain overwhelmed me, and I felt myself losing consciousness. The last thing I saw before everything faded was Daniel wiping away my blood in disgust. These 10 years I had been so foolish to believe this man ever loved me. When I opened my eyes again, I was sitting on a chair in the hospital corridor. There was no soreness in my body, no stabbing pain in my wrists. I was whole, untouched by years of suffering. Before I could fully process what was happening, my mother-in-law rushed over, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Emma, hurry, come inside. He has something to say to you." I followed her into the room. Daniel was lying weakly on the hospital bed, his body covered in tubes. On his left side stood Sophia, eyes red from crying, with her son Lucas beside her. I carefully examined the boy, who was just 7 years old at this time. Looking between him and Daniel, it was undeniable. They were a perfect mother-son copy. Sophia noticed my gaze and discreetly pulled Lucas into her arms. I withdrew my eyes and stepped closer to my husband, waiting for him to speak. "Emma, After I die, I will leave all my money and the house to you. All I ask is that you take good care of my mother and Sophia." His words were exactly the same as in my past life. Back then, I had cried my heart out, as if suddenly realizing how much he loved me. He was leaving everything to me, not even a single cent to his mother. At the time, I foolishly thought that in his heart, I was more important than his own mother. Without hesitation, I had nodded in agreement, accepting his request. And just like that, I devoted the next 10 years of my life to them, sacrificing my youth, falling ill, and ultimately dying with hatred in my heart. Thinking of that, I no longer needed to pretend. I cut him off coldly. "I don't want it. I only want what I rightfully deserve." His face changed. He hadn't expected me to refuse. Still, he pleaded, "Emma, you are my one and only wife. I have no one else to entrust my mother to. Please, can you grant me this dying wish? One and only wife?" Maybe, but the only woman he ever loved? Definitely not. How had I never realized he was this good with words? Sophia started crying. "Daniel is literally begging you. How can you be so heartless?" I refused to be manipulated again. Instead, I turned the guilt back on them. "Don't worry, Daniel. You still have Sophia. After all the help you've given her, I'm sure she will take good care of your mother." Sophia blurted out, "Why should I?" Daniel's face darkened even more. I let out a mocking smile but said nothing. He wasn't on his deathbed yet. He had only just had surgery. Back then, it was me who nursed him back to health, treating him like a fragile baby, taking care of the entire family while working multiple jobs. Thanks to my efforts, he recovered well, extending his life significantly. Meanwhile, I overworked myself paying off the mortgage and supporting the household, eventually ruining my own health. These two ungrateful parasites had taken everything from me once. This time, I wouldn't be their free caregiver. Illness truly reveals people's true nature. No matter how well they pretended before, moments like this expose them completely. Daniel sneered, "You're trying to cut ties before I'm even dead?" "Oh, I almost forgot about you," I said, turning to his mother, the ever-smiling two-faced snake. In my past life, she had acted like she cherished me like her own daughter, but behind my back, she had exploited me for the sake of her biological grandson. She had pushed me to work 3 jobs just to support them. She scoffed, "We've helped you so much. I treated you like my own daughter. You should be grateful and repay me for all I've done." "Is that so?" I tilted my head with a smile. "You think I should repay you? Then Sophia should too, don't you agree?" The old woman stiffened. Sophia looked down awkwardly, unable to say a word. If I couldn't escape their moral coercion, I would simply redirect it. If they wanted me to take care of Daniel, then by that logic, Sophia should be doing even more. I refused to get a divorce. I preferred to be a widow. None of them would have it easy this time. With the will settled, Daniel had recovered enough to be discharged from the hospital. That was when a new argument broke out. Who would take care of him at home? His mother sighed, "I can't do it. I'm too old. You young ones should handle it." Sophia quickly protested, "I can't either. I have a child to take care of, and besides, I don't know how to take care of a sick person." Then she turned to me with a fake smile. "Emma, you're the most suitable one. After all, you're his wife. It's more convenient for you than for us. I mean, I'm not really his sister after all, and there should be boundaries between men and women." I laughed coldly in my heart. "You two already have a child together, and yet you expect me to follow these ridiculous rules?" Both Daniel and his mother looked at me with hopeful eyes. To them, I was always the soft-hearted one, the one they could manipulate. I had no intention of playing along. "I can't. I have work to do." Daniel frowned. "He's not completely helpless. You can take care of him during your lunch break and come home earlier after work. Just wake up a bit earlier in the mornings." Easy for them to say. As if going back and forth wasn't exhausting. Did they think I didn't need rest? Putting on a pitiful expression, I sighed. There are so many expenses to handle. The family needs money, and since Mother is too old to work and Sophia has a child to raise, I'm the only one who can earn for us all. I'm planning to take on another job after my regular shift. I really don't have the time to care for him. Everything I said was reasonable and well justified. I was making sacrifices selflessly for this family. They had no reason to push the responsibility onto me anymore. Daniel looked at me with gratitude while his mother nodded in satisfaction. Sophia, however, was clearly displeased but knew she had no argument against my lack of time. So, the two of them resumed their argument over who should take care of Daniel. In the end, they decided to take turns, one person per day. This scene had never happened in my past life because back then, I had foolishly taken on the responsibility myself. I had carefully noted down everything the doctor said, making sure to follow all his instructions. Every day during my lunch break, I would rush home to cook a special meal just for Daniel. He needed a diet low in spice and certain other foods, while his mother and Sophia loved heavily seasoned, greasy dishes. For years, I had barely slept in a proper bed. I had specifically bought a folding chair and placed it next to Daniel's bed so I could watch over him at night. The slightest movement from him would jolt me awake. Whenever I had a free moment, I would push his wheelchair outside to get some sun, afraid he would get bored. I wondered, without my care in this life, would he still recover as well? This time, I lived differently. I went to work as usual, but after my shift, instead of rushing home, I spent my time in fun places, killing time until around 10 p.m. before returning home. By then, I would act exhausted, barely able to speak. I had carefully chosen 10 p.m. as my return time. If I came home even a little earlier, they would undoubtedly leave chores for me. But I had still underestimated them. On the very first day, all three of them were waiting for me in the living room. Sophia put on a pitiful face and said, "Emma, Mom and I talked it over and we think you should be the one to take care of Daniel at night. After all, you're his wife. It's more convenient. I mean, I'm an outsider, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to do it." They had clearly discussed this beforehand. They knew keeping watch at night was exhausting, and none of them wanted to sacrifice their sleep for Daniel. Daniel added, "Emma, we're husband and wife. It's perfectly normal for you to stay with me at night." How thoughtful of him. He must have been worried about poor Sophia losing sleep. Yet somehow, he had no concerns about my exhaustion, even though I was coming home at 10 p.m. every night. Why was it always me who had to be the right choice? I scoffed and turned to his mother. "Daniel is your biological son. What's there to avoid between you two? And as for Sophia, after everything Daniel has done for you, isn't it time for you to return the favor? It's not like he's bedridden or incontinent. He just needs someone to check on him at night. What's so inappropriate about that?" They hadn't expected me to refuse. Sophia quickly added, But I'm still single. What if rumors start?" Feigning surprise, I said, "That's funny. There are only a few of us in this house. Who exactly is going to spread rumors?" Her face froze. She had nothing left to say, but she was probably fuming inside. I didn't care. I left the problem for them to deal with, and went off to freshen up before going to bed. Just as I lay down, someone knocked on my door. It was Lucas. I hadn't expected him to still be awake at this hour. "What's wrong?" This little brat was no angel either. He was a heartless leech, trained by his mother to find ways to squeeze money out of me. "Auntie, my school needs book fees, but Mom doesn't have the money. Could you lend me some? I promise I'll pay you back when I grow up," he pleaded, looking at me with pitiful eyes. He was only 7, but he already knew how to play on an adult's sympathy. I had been fooled by this act too many times before. I said flatly, "Oh? Sorry, but I have no money to spare. All my money is reserved for your uncle's medical treatment. He's in much worse shape than you, don't you think?" Lucas hesitated, then scurried away. Not long after, I heard shouting from Sophia's room. She was furious, probably scolding him for failing to get money out of me. I ignored the noise and continued enjoying my beauty sleep. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Daniel and Sophia must have heard some kind of rumor because one night, they showed up at the restaurant where I was dining. At the time, I was discussing a business contract with my company's executives and colleagues. Sophia stared at me, visibly shocked by my polished, elegant appearance. She didn't even let me speak before she blurted out, "Didn't you say you were working extra jobs? How come you're out here having dinner, and in such an expensive restaurant, no less? Are you meeting some random man on a date?" Daniel's eyes burned with fury as he grabbed my wrist and demanded, "Who is that man? You have no shame." Are you looking for someone to replace me just because I'm sick? His voice was so loud that everyone around us turned to look, their gazes filled with disdain. I could even hear people whispering, "Wow, what a horrible woman. Her husband is sick, and instead of taking care of him, she's out here having an affair? Gold digger. Her poor husband, even in his condition, has to catch her cheating. She's heartless. She'll get what she deserves." Hearing the crowd take their side, Sophia grew smug and eagerly fanned the flames. "Emma, how could you do this to Daniel? He's been so good to you. He even wrote in his will that he'd leave everything to you, and this is how you repay him? Daniel is too pitiful. Imagine marrying such a heartless gold digger." Once again, she stirred the crowd's sympathy. Someone even stood up, glaring at me, and sneered, "People like you don't deserve happiness. You'll never have a good life." At that moment, the person sitting across from me returned from the restroom. My boss frowned as he took in the scene, silently asking me what was going on. Daniel noticed him immediately. Realizing that this must be the man I had met tonight, he stormed forward, grabbing my boss by the collar. "So you're her lover, huh? Do you even know she has a husband? Ruining someone else's marriage won't end well for you." "You've misunderstood," my boss said calmly. "I'm her supervisor. We're here discussing a business contract." Daniel scoffed. "Oh, please. Everyone caught cheating uses that excuse." He didn't believe a word and raised his hand to punch my boss. But my boss was faster. He easily blocked Daniel's attack. Daniel, still recovering from his illness, was no match for a healthy man. Seeing that he was losing, Sophia immediately jumped in, wailing dramatically as she scratched and clawed. "Oh, my poor Daniel. If it weren't for his sickness, how could he possibly lose to you? I swear I'll fight you myself." I frowned and stepped forward, blocking her path. "That's enough, Sophia. You're making a scene." She turned to the crowd, her voice shrill. "Look, everyone. The cheating couple is defending each other. Help us. They're bullying Daniel just because he's sick." The overly sympathetic onlookers started stirring, as if they were ready to jump in and take their side. I clenched my fists and said firmly, "Daniel, I'm working hard to earn money for your medical treatment, and yet you still don't trust me?" "I only believe what I see with my own eyes," he shot back. Just then, another colleague of mine, this time, a woman, stepped forward from our table. She glared at them and said coldly, "What do you think you're doing? I'm calling the police." The moment the word police was mentioned, the other diners snapped back to their senses and quickly backed away. Sophia turned pale, glaring at my colleague. "Who the hell are you? Mind your own business." Unfortunately for her, my female colleague was not just anyone. She was my boss's secret girlfriend, and also a good friend of mine. She crossed her arms and smirked. "Are you serious? You're talking nonsense? My boyfriend is cheating and somehow I'm here too?" The moment she said that, the entire restaurant fell into awkward silence. The crowd suddenly realized that they had misunderstood the situation. Sophia froze, pointing at my boss in disbelief. He's your boyfriend? But I thought you said this was a work meeting." My colleague rolled her eyes. "What, you think couples can't work together?" Then she turned to Daniel, her expression sharp. "Now, are you going to let go of my boyfriend's collar and apologize?" Daniel, now humiliated, hesitated before finally letting go and mumbling an apology. The louder he had yelled earlier, the more embarrassing this moment became for him now. The murmurs in the restaurant started again. So, it was all a misunderstanding? That guy was way out of line. He didn't even check the facts before storming in here. Seriously, what if he had ruined her career? And that woman, Daniel's sister, she's clearly been stirring up trouble the whole time. I bet she's got an agenda. The tide had turned. The anger and accusations that had been directed at me were now aimed at Daniel and Sophia instead. The two of them lowered their heads, tails between their legs, and slunk away the same way they had come. As soon as they left, the restaurant guests also withdrew their stares and returned to their meals. I shot my friend a grateful look. If my boss hadn't been her boyfriend, I might have been fired tonight. These two had the audacity to accuse me of cheating, while they were the ones doing disgusting things behind my back. Turns out, they never truly believed I was working at night. They had secretly followed me here. It seemed I needed to be more cautious from now on. That night, when I got home, Daniel was still awake, clearly waiting for me. The moment I walked in, his face filled with guilt. "I'm sorry. I lost my temper today. Is your job okay?" I scoffed internally. He wasn't apologizing because he truly felt bad. He was just afraid that if I lost my job, no one would be there to support him anymore. "It's fine. I explained everything to my boss." "Emma," he hesitated, "have you thought about what I mentioned before?" He still hadn't given up. He was probably getting more desperate now that his health was deteriorating, afraid that his precious mistress and son would have no one to take care of them after he was gone. I suddenly asked, "The savings account should have about $500,000, right?" My question visibly unsettled him. His face stiffened, his guilt practically written all over him. "It's probably not that much." "Why wouldn't it be?" I pressed. "Show me the bank book." His panic deepened. "My mom keeps it. She's already asleep. I'll show you tomorrow." I smiled knowingly. I remember my dowry and wedding gifts were also deposited in that account. There should be at least $500,000, if not more. I laid out the exact breakdown, my tone unwavering. The more I spoke, the darker his expression became. Finally, he made a weak excuse about being tired and quickly retreated to his room. He really thought I was stupid. In my past life, he had secretly siphoned off most of the savings, giving it to his mother and Sophia. By the time I got access, there was only $100,000 left, and even that amount had mostly gone toward supporting them. Meanwhile, I had scrimped and saved every penny for myself. This time, I wasn't going to let them get away with it. No matter what tricks they pulled, I'd be ready. The next morning at breakfast, Daniel finally handed me the bank book. Just as I expected, he must have scrambled overnight to transfer the money back to cover his tracks. I glanced at Sophia and his mother, who both looked displeased. That only made me feel more satisfied. "See," I said with a smirk. "I was right, the account does have over $500,000. Daniel forced an awkward chuckle. "Yeah, you have a great memory." Sophia, her tone laced with jealousy, sneered, "Look at how generous my brother is to you, just handing over all this money without hesitation. You better not let him down." I gave a slow, mocking smile. "Sophia, Daniel and I are husband and wife. Half of this money belongs to me anyway. Not to mention most of it came from my dowry and wedding gifts. It was always mine to begin with." I had been a fool in my past life, blindly trusting him and letting him combine our finances. His mother's face twisted in displeasure. "You're already married into this family. Why are you still being so calculative? Money should be shared." I arched a brow and looked directly at Sophia. "Exactly. This family isn't just about me and Daniel, is it?" The implication was clear. Sophia had been leeching off this household for years. Their expressions soured. His mother tried to salvage the situation, plastering on a fake smile. "We're all one family. There's no need to argue about these things." Daniel gave her a subtle look, silently telling her to stop talking. He turned back to me and sighed. "Emma, what I worry about most after I'm gone is you. I owe you too much. To give you some security, I'll add your name to the house title." He paused before adding, "Of course, there's still a mortgage to pay off. But if you work hard, once the loan is cleared, we'll get your name added." What a grand and generous promise. Too bad I wasn't interested. He thought he could bait me into paying off his mortgage? He was afraid that after he died, his mother and Sophia wouldn't be able to handle the payments. Besides, I knew the truth. In my past life, he had never intended to give me the house. The deed had been under his mother's name the entire time. Later, he even added Sophia's name to it. I only found out about that near the end. Daniel had always truly cared about Sophia. He would never let me take her place. And after all my years of hard work, once Daniel was gone, did they really think his mother would honor her promise and add my name to the deed? Of course not. They must have thought I was an idiot. I let out a soft chuckle. "No need. I didn't marry you for a house. Besides, the house belongs to your mother. It should stay with her for retirement." Daniel froze. Daniel was clearly trying to figure out how I knew the house was under his mother's name. "My son can't earn money right now, and I can't afford the mortgage either. How about this? We'll use the savings for now, and later, I'll pay you back. Don't worry, I'll do whatever it takes. Even if I have to sell everything, I'll make sure you get your money back." Seeing that I wasn't falling for their tricks, his mother quickly came up with another plan. No matter what, every scenario she proposed ended up with me losing out. The money going back and forth was always mine. I glanced at Daniel. His eyes were filled with pity for his mother, and he looked frustrated with his own situation. Mom, what are you saying? Our money is your money. There's no need to talk about borrowing and paying back. Tomorrow, we'll go and pay off the mortgage in one lump sum, then add Emma's name to the house. That way, I can rest easy knowing she'll take care of you and Sophia. How could we do that? That's your entire life savings. His mother dramatically wiped at her tears. Daniel pulled her into a comforting embrace. Money can always be earned again. The most important thing to me is you and Sophia. Watching them cling to each other and cry, anyone would hesitate to interfere. But I wasn't just anyone. I had died once before. I knew their game. These two were tag teaming, throwing words back and forth to manipulate me into handing over my money, while simultaneously turning me into their personal maid. They must have thought I was easy to control. Are you forgetting something? I interrupted coldly. Other than the $100,000 we saved together during our marriage, the rest of the money is from my personal assets before we got married. You have no right to decide how it's spent. He planned to use my money to pay off the mortgage, then act like he had done me a favor by putting my name on the deed, expecting me to be so grateful that I'd willingly take care of his mother and his mistress for the rest of my life. What kind of dying man could be so calculating? My words cut through their little act. His mother immediately tried another angle. Well, if the house is going under your name, it's only fair for you to contribute some money toward it, right? My son is sick, and I'm old. You can't expect me to shoulder the mortgage, can you? I laughed mockingly. Oh? And what does her age have to do with me? Did I make her old? I already said I don't care about your house, so why should my money go toward paying off your loan? Daniel stiffened. So you're saying, you want to draw clear lines between us now? His gaze darkened, the threat in his eyes growing stronger. I had forgotten something important. He was dying. He had nothing left to lose. If I pushed him too far, he might just go all in and drag me down with him, but I didn't care. I raised my hand and slapped him across the face. What's with that look in your eyes? I controlled my strength well. I didn't want to accidentally kill him, otherwise he'd just use that against me. Daniel clutched his face in disbelief, the red imprint of my palm quickly appearing on his cheek. Go ahead. Keep threatening me, I sneered. I've already died once. Do you think I'd be scared of you? As long as I could make their lives miserable in this lifetime, my second chance wouldn't be wasted. You, how dare you? He was completely stunned. This wasn't how I used to be. I had never fought back like this before. He was still struggling to process it when Sophia suddenly shrieked. How dare you hit Daniel? I won't let you get away with this. She rushed at me, her hand raised to slap me. But I wasn't in the mood to be merciful. I caught her wrist effortlessly and swung my other hand, slapping her across the face just as hard. Unlike Daniel, she was perfectly healthy. There was no need to hold back. She went flying, landing hard on the floor, her cheek already swelling. That was when Daniel finally snapped out of it. He immediately rushed to her, cradling her in his arms like she was the most precious thing in the world. Wow. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. I rolled my shoulders, cracking my knuckles, and was just about to give them another round of slaps when something suddenly hit me in the head. The sharp sting made me crouch down instinctively. I turned toward the source of the attack. It was Lucas. He was glaring at me with pure hatred, a toy car still clutched in his hand. He wasn't done. He was holding a toy sword, ready to charge at me. Sophia, still nestled in Daniel's arms, cheered him on. Good job, sweetie. Hit her harder. Teach that bitch a lesson. Like mother, like son, a pair of ungrateful parasites. I strode over, yanking the toy sword from Lucas's grip before grabbing him by the collar. He kicked and struggled, but I didn't let go. Ignoring the frantic shouting from behind me, I carried him straight to a room, threw him inside, and locked the door. I could hear them pounding on the door, their voices hysterical. Sophia shrieked, Let go of my son. Open the door. I'll kill you. I smirked. You say that like I'd actually open the door now. Did they take me for a fool? I struck even harder. Lucas screamed louder. Daniel's mother was heartbroken. Emma, if you're angry, take it out on me instead. Don't bully a child. Whatever wrongs were committed, they're my fault. I'm the one who let you down. Hearing such satisfying words, I eased up a little. Sophia, however, shrieked. You're just mad because you don't have a child of your own, so you're taking it out on mine. I immediately landed another hard strike. Lucas cried out in pain. After a few more hits, they finally figured out what they should and shouldn't say in this situation. Daniel's mother pleaded, Emma, don't be mad. Just let the child go. Whatever the issue is, take it out on me. Sophia quickly followed. I was too impulsive, okay? I'm sorry. Daniel's mother added, Emma, I was wrong. I shouldn't have asked you to pay off the mortgage. It was all my fault. Now, that was the response I had been waiting for. I released Lucas and unlocked the door. The three of them rushed past me, scrambling to check on him. Daniel pulled Lucas into his arms, comforting him like the doting father he was. What a touching display of fatherly love. Leaning against the doorframe, I smirked. What's with all the fuss? As his aunt, am I not allowed to discipline a misbehaving child? It turns out that sometimes you just have to be ruthless. The moment you have leverage, no one dares to step on you. Right now, I was the only one in this house making money. Of course, they wouldn't dare to go against me. They even had to force Lucas to apologize. I picked up the bank book and tucked it into my bag before turning to Daniel. I'm taking back my money. I'll transfer the extra savings to you later. For now, I'm going back to my parents' house. You all are too annoying to look at. I stayed at my parents' house for over a month before receiving news that Daniel was critically ill. That surprised me. I hadn't expected his condition to deteriorate so quickly. When I arrived at the hospital, I was shocked to realize it was the same hospital room where I had died in my past life. The moment Daniel saw me, his expression shifted with excitement. His first words immediately piqued my interest. You came back too, didn't you? I froze. I hadn't expected this at all. Daniel had also been reborn. What nonsense are you talking about? I feigned confusion. Impossible. If you hadn't come back, our family wouldn't have ended up like this. The mortgage should have been paid off by now. My health shouldn't be this bad. So he knew everything. He had been fully aware of my sacrifices in our past life, yet he had still taken me for granted. I couldn't let my thoughts slip. If I spoke carelessly, I'd risk being labeled insane. His ramblings confirmed one thing. His time was truly up. Tears streamed down his face as he looked at me with pleading eyes. Please. I know it was all my fault. Just forgive me this once. For the sake of our marriage, take care of my mom, Sophia, and Lucas. I swear, I really wanted to leave everything to you. You have to believe me. Was he seriously taking me for an idiot? He had come back, but apparently he had left his brain behind. I leaned in close to his ear and whispered, enunciating every word clearly. Keep dreaming. His eyes widened in shock. How can you be so heartless? You won't have a good death. Sorry, I said with a smirk, but the one dying right now is you. The heart monitor beside him started beeping rapidly. I called the doctor and signed the waiver to discontinue treatment. His final gaze lingered on Sophia and Lucas, unwilling to let go, before he finally took his last breath. If he had just died like a normal person, I wouldn't have felt much. But knowing that he had been reborn, only to still fail miserably in this life, filled me with immense satisfaction. I watched calmly as the three of them clung to his body, sobbing uncontrollably. Pretending to wipe away non-existent tears, I put on a solemn expression. But this wasn't enough. I had always wondered, why had Sophia been so devoted to a dying man? Was it really love? If it had been love, then why had Daniel's health worsened under her care? If not for love, then there was only one possibility. Daniel must have had a secret stash of money. This was exactly why Daniel and his family had so easily handed over the $500,000 to me. And why I had refused to divorce him until this very moment. At the funeral, the person I had been waiting for finally arrived, Daniel's lawyer, holding his real will. I glanced at the document. Wow, he really had money. The will stated that all $5 million of his assets would be left to his son. His son? Daniel and I never had children. Where did this supposed son come from? Sophia could no longer contain her excitement. That son is Lucas, Daniel's biological child. You didn't know, did you? I was Daniel's first love, not just some adopted sister. She was practically shaking with joy, barely suppressing her laughter. You idiot, you've been played all along. Daniel secretly set aside this money just for me. I ignored her and turned to the lawyer. The will states that the inheritance goes to his son. Do you have a paternity test to confirm the relationship? Sophia's smile froze. I knew I had hit the mark. These two fools had never done a DNA test. The lawyer carefully reviewed the documents before shaking his head. No, there is no paternity test included in the records. In that case, I continued calmly, this will is invalid. Legally, as his wife, I am the primary beneficiary of his estate. Panic flickered across Sophia's face. She grabbed a photo and shoved it at the lawyer. No, Lucas is Daniel's biological son. Why do we need a paternity test? Look at this picture. Look at my son. They're practically identical. How could he not be his father? The lawyer remained professional. Sorry, but inheritance cases require scientific proof, not assumptions based on appearance. Sophia turned to Daniel's mother in desperation. Ask his mom, she knows. Lucas is Daniel's real son. She clung to Daniel's mother as if finding a lifeline. Mom, tell them it's true. The lawyer remained firm. I'm sorry, but a paternity test requires the presence of both parties. Unfortunately, the father in question is deceased. You're lying. You must have been bribed. Sophia snapped. Losing all reason, she grabbed the lawyer's collar and started screaming. But the lawyer wasn't about to tolerate such behavior. He immediately pulled out his phone and called the police. It wasn't long before Sophia was forcibly taken away. That left Daniel's mother standing there with Lucas, looking at me pitifully. Emma, she sobbed, we wronged you. But please, have some mercy on the child. He's still so young, and we still have a mortgage to pay off. We really need this money. She was smart. She knew that as long as I acknowledged Lucas as Daniel's son, he would become the rightful heir. I crossed my arms and smiled faintly. That's strange. My husband always treated me well. Before he died, he said he wanted to leave everything to me. He would never have cheated. I think Sophia made up lies to steal his money. That's not true, Daniel's mother screamed. He cheated. It was me who told him to recognize Sophia as his adopted sister, just so she could move in with us. Lucas is my biological grandson. At this point, she no longer cared about how the surrounding guests viewed her. I raised my voice, addressing the crowd. Everyone, don't believe what my mother-in-law says. She's just grieving, and was manipulated by Sophia. My husband was loyal to me. I know that better than anyone. Naturally, people sided with me. After all, what kind of woman would cover up her husband's affair unless she was telling the truth? Some people even stepped forward to console Daniel's mother. I know losing a son is painful, one said, but you can't just claim any child as your grandson. Sure, Lucas does resemble Daniel a little, but without a paternity test, how can we be certain? Another added, besides, your daughter-in-law herself denies it. If anyone knew the truth, it would be her. You wouldn't want Daniel to be restless in the afterlife, someone else said. Daniel's mother snapped. She shoved the people away and screamed, What do you mean, claim a grandson? Lucas is my grandson. He is Daniel's son. He is. And you? She pointed a trembling finger at me, her face contorted with rage. You knew all of this from the start. That's why you refused to divorce him. You were waiting for this moment. I sighed. Then, without hesitation, I called for someone to take her away. Daniel's mother had clearly lost it. To prevent any further harm, I arranged for her to be taken to the hospital to stabilize her emotions. As they led her away, she struggled and shouted, I'm not crazy. But the more she fought, the more she looked like she had lost her mind. The people around me started looking at me with growing sympathy. Oh, how pitiful I must have looked. A widow at such a young age, a mother-in-law who had lost her mind, and a malicious troublemaker locked away. I cast a glance at Lucas, who was standing off to the side, shrinking into himself, too afraid to meet my gaze. It seemed I had truly beaten him into submission. He didn't dare to utter a single word. I withdrew my gaze and proceeded with the funeral arrangements as planned. Once everything was settled and the guests had left, many people came up to comfort me, saying that if life ever got too difficult, I should reach out to them. I nodded sorrowfully, expressing my gratitude, though inside, I was laughing. They had no idea, starting from this moment, My life was only going to get better. A few days after the funeral, the lawyer called. The $5 million had officially fallen into my hands. As for Sophia, that lunatic, she had been detained for 15 days for assaulting the lawyer. Lucas's whereabouts had nothing to do with me. He had likely been taken in by one of Sophia's relatives. Taking advantage of the situation, I sold the house under my mother-in-law's name. After all, there was no way she could afford to pay off the mortgage now, nor would she ever have the chance. Every penny from the sale was transferred directly to the psychiatric hospital. With that, she would never be able to leave. As for Sophia, her real suffering was just about to begin once she was released. I had heard that she had taken out multiple loans to buy luxury goods, and now the debt collectors were actively searching for her. Being the kind and helpful person I was, I made sure to inform them of her exact location. After taking care of everything, I took my savings and moved out of the city with my parents. The money wasn't an enormous fortune, but it was more than enough for us to live comfortably. Honestly, if they had just been upfront with me and divorced from the start, things wouldn't have ended this way. But they couldn't bear to lose their free labor. They wanted to exchange a small amount of money for a lifelong unpaid caregiver. Yet when you try to take too much, you end up with nothing. Karma doesn't come immediately, but it always comes eventually. I sat on a beach, the sun warming my skin, feeling more relaxed than I had in 2 lifetimes. It didn't matter anymore. Because from now on, this was the life I would live.